Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This is Seeking Me Productions, bring you another ranking video review.
Well, this time we're going to be going back through some animation, and this time we're really going to be focusing on Paramount.
Yeah, this is the second in a series of videos that we're going to continue on doing because we got some decent traction from when we did Disney TV animation.
Hey, we're only giving our own opinion on these things, and you know, everybody's got their own judgments on where things might rank or be placed on their own charts, but this is just ours.
Yes, and this particular list, let's just say that it is very evident that we're among the millennial generation.
Mm-hmm.
This could have easily have been its own Nickelodeon list.
Yeah,
And very easily, but what's very different from the Disney first video is that to accommodate represent basically most of all Paramount TV animation, you'll see Nickelodeon, but also MTV when they did do TV.
they need to get back to some stuff like that because man, it was quite a time to be a kid
or a teenager.
Honestly.
Yes, and also Comedy Central.
Oh yeah.
So it's basically covering all the age ranges and whatnot in this video. Also, we are very close to 1,000 subscribers.
So close.
So if you want to see much more media out there, just check out, like, and also subscribe, and be notified for when other videos are uploaded. So right off the bat, let's do some honorable mentions here, just so you'll know exactly how we're feeling this list.
Yep.
Fairly Odd Parents.
When this came out, let's just go ahead and say we really did like this series. It was definitely shaping up to be one of those awesome series that was going to be coming around here and probably be on the Mount Rushmore of animated greatness.
It could have easily been on this list as well.
Honestly. But, you know, towards its, running of the end, I feel as though the show lost itself, especially when they decided to add in the concept of Poof the baby and stuff like that.
It fell into the classic sitcom trap.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if somebody brings in a Chop Baby, it means that your show is going well down under. Another of the Nickelodeon era spectrum is SpongeBob SquarePants.
Now, I wanted to say this right now. SpongeBob, in its heyday, we're talking about like the first season type of SpongeBob. That was some peak stuff right there. It had a uniqueness to it that was fresh and interesting, and it just felt like it was its own thing. But towards going after
the first movie,
yeah,
you could clearly see the quality going down.
It was just,
we didn't care much.
Yeah, it was not the same.
South Park.
South Park was special. It was just like that cartoon that when you really thought that your parents was upstairs and whatnot and just minding their own business. That was definitely one of those cartoons you really had to sneak and watch if you really could. And it was so cool when being able to do that. The whole South Park gang, Kyle, Kenny, who was really my favorite.
And like SpongeBob, that show is still ongoing.
That's probably where its main issue is. There is a thing is so much of a good thing. And I feel as though with South Park, it really did, it lasted longer than it honestly should.
But that being said, now let's start off with the actual listing of our favorite best of Paramount TV animation. Starting off the bat is Invader Zim.
Oh my God! This was definitely for my dark goth guys out there, and guys and girls and everybody in between. Invader Zim was just it was so cool.
Yeah.
It had action. It had all the laughs. I mean, I think one of my favorite episodes for Invader Zim was the Game Slave.
Oh
my God.
Yeah.
So cool.
Like Invader Zim is a series about an alien invader, the smallest of his kind, and like not the respected one either.
I don't know if he was a smaller, but he was definitely he was the black sheep of his people that was sent to Earth as a
joke.
and basically a means of being to get out of their hairs and whatnot. And it's the whole series really revolves around his antics in order to try and conquer over Earth itself. But he's always thwarted thanks to his unique nemesis and that of a young human boy named Dib.
Yeah.
And it's so cool being able to go
Who's
back.
a cry wolf situation.
Yeah, very much.
The show was at the time the darkest of Nickelodeon had to offer, but unfortunately, that dark and very sadistic like nature of the show is the reason why it was short lived for such a long time, and something that you will see as a recurring theme on this list is that a lot of these shows actually ended up having a revival of some sorts or an actual ending film later down the line, like Invader Zim.
I feel as though with the movie, or at least the continuation they tried to do with that film, I understand where they were trying to go with it, but I don't know if it was basically where it honestly should have been for a send off for that series. But be as it may, Invader Zim still holds quite a special place in our hearts.
Mm-hmm. Next on the list, Drawn Together.
This show had no business existing. And I still to this day question our motives as to watching it. But yeah, this was definitely one of those gems that you just had to, be there to witness unfold before your very eyes. Drawn Together really focuses itself on, it is pretty much the animated variation of the real world.
Or Big Brother on CBS.
Yeah, that. So any of those, those grouped together shows where they take individuals living in a house together, that's where Drawn Together really centers itself for in its story structure. But it does it with characters that are supposed to be spoofs or rip-offs of different real world characters. You have
basically
real world, not real world characters, but anime characters,
anime or video games, anything in the animation field.
Yeah, it's there.
The strong appeal to this show is essentially trying to offend as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't think by the end of this series, I don't know if there's anybody who wasn't touched or who was not affected by what they were trying to do in that show.
A lot of the jokes that they tackle on, still holds up.
South Park is literally one of those other shows that's the only other show I feel as though you could really compare to it. But in many ways, it goes beyond what South Park ever tried to do.
It's an accomplishment that show lasted 3 seasons. It had a film, but I feel as though that film is even much more horrible quality compared to how things ended, especially since it was...
It's times you had to be there to watch it. If you get a chance...
It's high-quality comedy.
You will... I would be shocked if you did not come out of that laughing.
Jimmy Neutron.
I mean, when the movie came out, Jimmy Neutron had me. I mean, it's one of those rare, 3D.
It was among the earliest fully CG animated films to come out. Paramount released it through Nickelodeon Films, and in reverse of what you'll see on this list, the TV show spin off that movie. Like Jimmy Neutron is about a boy genius. And a fictional retro city of Retroville, this very 1950s, 60s-esque setting that, even though this CG animation was early 2000s, I feel as though because it's hyper stylized and that very much, so the writing is actually where it's surprisingly well done with a lot of the character development.
I feel as though anybody really could have just sat down and actually enjoyed Jimmy Neutron, whether or not you were a child or a teenager or even adults.
And it's just weird that the production company couldn't continue making the series because of a random movie that they made called The Ant Bully. Flopped.
Listen, that was so it made no sense. I feel as though Jimmy Neutron should have definitely survived past that, but it is what it is.
Listen, in the middle ground here was Celebrity Deathmatch.
They need to bring this show back. I don't care what that is. I know that they did earlier on. They did bring it back for a hot second, but I feel as though with this doom day and age, this new generation, I feel as though Celebrity Deathmatch should be around for as long as you possibly can. the claymation style that this show does and the way they utilize it in this animation, especially with the fights in this series, which again, if you didn't really understand what the heck Deathmatch really was, it was pretty much a spoof off of the whole concept of ring fights, concept that they brought actual celebrities to participate in these one-on-one death matches against each other.
Now, these are fictionalized versions of them.
Yeah, nobody is really doing this stuff for real.
Now, it is funny when they actually was able to get the actual actors.
Special. That was pretty special stuff.
But that was like, because it's very basic premise.
Yeah,
it should be one of those shows like South Park or SpongeBob that should be an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the claymation does take a lot more time than traditional animation or CG, so it's on a production standpoint I can understand. Another of the MTV spectrum that I feel as though it painfully is so relevant is Daria.
Oh my God! From the title sequence alone, the la 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 la, that's my song. I mean, oh my God, I just love that show.
I feel as though a lot of the much more millennial crowd's mindset is very much
everything that this show was. Everything that show really was.
Now, Daria is in itself as a pseudo spinoff of one of MTV's other animated show, Beavis and Butthead. The way they spun off of it, of being this coming of age dramedy of sorts,
it vastly speeds past what Beavis and Butthead really was. I feel as though the antics and at least just the everyday drama that goes with the character of Daria herself and her melancholy aspects of her of how she approaches life and the situations that she finds herself and her friends in is just something that I feel as though a lot of other coming of age animated series just does not necessarily compare to the same pedestal that I feel as though Daria really finds herself on. And I feel as though another thing I would want to just point out is that we're currently living, in my personal opinion, in an episode of Six Sad World.
Ren and Stimpy.
As we stated before, Ren and Stimpy was an aspect of this time period which was really gross and really messed up. And I feel as though anybody who actually knows about this series, or those two particular individuals, when we talk about that chihuahua and that cat, the stuff that went down on that show still haunts me to this day.
Now, Ren and Stimpy, and like another on this list, were among the first of Nickelodeon's cartoons. And Ren and Stimpy, it has this nostalgic aesthetic to it because just similar to the Jimmy Neutron, this has it takes on the realm of the 1950s Tex Avery, Looney Tunes type shows, but there's such a harder edge that this show does that even crosses boundaries to even some adults will find cringe.
And now having to learn, when taking a step back and actually seeing how and why the show was able to get away with some of the stuff. Well, they didn't really necessarily get away because they did.
They just did it.
Yeah, they just did it. And knowing who was at helm on this on that project, it makes a lot of sense why the show ended up being the way it really was. Mm-hmm. So it's again, I guess it's in the same boat as Drawn Together. It's a wonder how that show was even brought.
Mind you, Ren and Stimpy was aimed for younger audiences, but obviously they were writing for adults.
Yeah.
Other one of the earlier Nickelodeon shows, Rocko's Modern Life.
I love Rocko. I love everybody on that show. It's like a slice of life, but it's in its own wackiness aspects to it. And I feel as though the only other show, at least in this modern age, that comes close to the concept of what Marco's Modern Life was trying to do is possibly the Wonderful World of Gumball. In some sense.
The early. It's definitely earlier iteration of that type of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a world there's nothing filled with anthropomorphic animals.
Going about everyday life, but also having some incredibly, weird and outlandish things going on. The show centers itself on the titular character of Rocco, who is a wallaby, transplanted from his home back from his family from in Australia into this wacky city area where he befriends certain other individuals that are just going about trying to just survive in the millennium in the aspects of young adulthood.
In that era, like Rocket's My Life is like very satirizes a lot of the extravagant that exaggerates everyday life. A lot of it's spot on where it was trying to go at, and it's like it was, even though it's aimed at younger kids.
Any adult who watched the show can totally relate with everything that was going on with the characters themselves and the antics in which they had to go through. I feel as though one of those, till this day, one of the most spot on jokes they actually had on that show dealt with the character of Dracula and how he was done to death. It was like, yes! Oh my god, this show just gets it.
It also had a late legacy film that concluded one of the one of the ongoing storylines that did occur in that show. It was on Black Invader Zim is on Netflix. I think it's called The Static Cling. Top 3 now of Paramount TV Animation, and basically finish up the earlier days of Nickelodeon. Rugrats.
The stuff those babies went down on, I mean, it's crazy how their parents didn't just get, child protective services called on them.
On a regular.
How any of those kids never really died. And then if you go follow those, what did you call those conspiracy stories? I mean, it's a wild, situation to be in.
Rugrats is basically follows the everyday the misadventures of some babies.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they're babies, and a few toddlers that was mixed into them in there as well.
Let's just this was among the most successful of Nickelodeon's programming. It was at the time even more popular than SpongeBob before SpongeBob made his rounds
and really stole his thunder.
But Rugrats was still when it was still airing. It was still big. Had 3 movies in theaters, mind you.
And they're actually really good, to be honest with you.
Not the third one.
Yeah, not the third. The third one kind of sucked, but the first 2, I'll give them thumbs up on that one.
Those movies, and the thing is about those movies, they change both of them. They changed directory of the show itself, so they're in canon. And to the point that I feel as though it changed it, and it really should. Each time they changed, it did shift into gears on where people probably stopped watching the series, or where it gained viewership as well.
Pretty much.
We basically watched it until the very end, especially leading up to the follow-up series.
It's one of those rare shows that we really did do that with, because it was such a huge aspect of our childhood, and at the same time, I feel as though it was definitely still one of those shows that didn't lose as much thunder as so many others did.
I just feel, as hindsight, I wish they had a little bit more episodes focusing on the adult characters.
Oh yeah.
Just retrospectively, if you growing up want to watch this show, a lot of the a lot of adult situations, they are so relatable now, and we don't even have kids. Oh we can understand watching our parents. I now
understand how Stu and Dee Dee felt.
It had a follow-up series, All Grown Up.
It tried. It was just not given the same love as I feel. So
because the Rugrats dealt with very highly exaggerated situations, while All Grown Up was more grounded.
Yeah, and I feel as though that was the main issue with that series. It's like it did not. It tried to take itself way more seriously than it honestly should have.
Runner-up among our favorites of Paramount TV Animation is Hey Arnold. He's living in a very fictional version of fictionalized-esque version of New York or New Jersey, or Chicago,
I thought
amalgamation of those.
I thought it was Washington, though, to be honest with you, with the PS13. It is what it is. It was basically a slice of life series that was revolved around the antics of Arnold hanging around with his family and his friends.
In the urban setting.
Mm-hmm.
The series, very innovative in the storytelling because of it does not talk down to its audience at all, especially with how they're able to balance childlike innocence with some very heavy subject matter.
And they tackle quite a bit.
But they're able to still be within that realm of playfulness of a lot of other storylines as well.
I wish there were more shows that was brought that there's today that's in the same field as Arnold tried to tackle itself, because it's a breath of fresh air compared to other series out there. And I love my whimsical, I love my fantasy, I love my action adventure stuff, but I feel as though Arnold or Hey Arnold really focuses on aspects of story structure that I feel as though students and kids and anybody could really just gravitate to and just feel genuine and real.
Like you have a main character who really is, even though he's like a elementary 9-year-old, he acts like a very strong role model to not only the children characters in there, but also the adults look up to this kid.
And it gets, and the writing for him alone is so interesting and so nuanced in a way that it doesn't ever feel preachy. Even though he could honestly come off that way and just feel annoying that he's okay, he's so high and down. No, he's not. He's just real and he's sincere. And that's it's so cool to have characters like that. And
I feel though that he's written so well because they write him that you can still feel the humbleness to his character.
It's okay to be humble, y'all. In fact, more folks out there need to get humbled. Yeah. And I'm just gonna say this too: when they were telling those those mythological or lore type episodes, especially when told by Gerald, it's so cool.
Yeah, and they mainly did those in the earlier seasons, but it's still like I'm surprised at how adult the show also got as well. So like, hold up. Even when we were a kid, you know, like, wait, hold on. They're not doing that. But they did. We appreciate it. That's why I never like it when for productions that are aimed at you and younger kids, they feel so forced to be in that age range. I feel as though it's just best to write it as if anybody can be looked at. It's just that you just smoothed out a lot of the edges to the point that, okay, now it's suitable for all ages.
Exactly.
Something that can be said about our number one on this list. A show or shows or a world in which we already discussed on this channel.
Yep.
And we're talking about Nickelodeon's Avatar.
The answer to Japanese or any Asian aesthetic, animation out there that America actually got to develop, and honestly, is on par with almost everything that comes out. Avatar was so special when it was first introduced, and we knew there was going to be something interesting when we finally got to see it for the first time, and it has proven to be at least a heavy hitter even now.
Yeah, Avatar. It came out during a time where Cartoon Network was it was in the peak of Toonami, and Nickelodeon they one of the areas which they really struggled with trying to produce was in the action area.
Yeah.
And they had some shows that
had action elements of it in there, but it just never was exactly what Cartoon Network was really dishing out.
And so Avatar was such a breath of fresh air, and it's very obvious where their influences are, but it was also feels its own originality of how they did. Now Avatar, like we discussed on this channel, or for many others who discuss, is in a very fictionalized world that's highly inspired by Asian or Southeastern or indigenous.
A conglomeration of different Asian aesthetic mythologies and and customs that's all rolled up into a concept behind elements and spirituality.
And there's only one person who is able to control all four of the elements to
That
bring
being-
harmony
And that individual
balance.
is being the Avatar. Now, the very first series is centers itself around a young airbender who is the last of his kind, known as Aang, and his antics and how he attempts to try and save his world from the devastation caused by the oppression of a nation known as the Fire Nation, trying to take over the entirety of their world. And he does this with his young group and of individuals that he met along his journey.
Now, 3 seasons, very strong. When we reviewed it, and still to this day, is among the very few epic programs that we post on this channel. Its follow-up series, Legend of Korra, still great in its own right. Like some areas, like improved on what Avatar: The Last Airbender did, but the sort of storytelling, because of how they decided to structure it, fell off a little bit in certain regards, but still still among peak animation.
It very much is.
At the time of this video, a 3rd series is in development called Seven Havens, which will take place after Korra.
And of course, there is on Netflix the live action adaptation, or at least the second go round of trying to do the live action series. And in its own right, it's actually pretty well developed and really well made. We look forward to seeing its second season, or at least the second part of season 1, however you want to look at
Hope
it.
they improve on what the obvious criticisms of that production is, but we're still looking out for it.
But there it is. That's our list for Paramount Animation.
TV animation.
Exactly.
Like, what did you think about our list? What is your memories of watching Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central when they develop animation programs on a regular? If you want us to continue on discussing these things, please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Check us out other social media outlets of Threads, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
Of course.
And also, stay tuned for other great content.
See y'all soon.
See ya.